everybody. Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy coming at you with another fun podcast episode. I just wanted to jump on and introduce this episode. I bring my brother Mark back on. I do sound a little tired because I was up from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. watching a pig picking, watching a pig cook on a big grill, and had to do my shift. So anyway, sounding a little tired, but we're still getting it done. And it's always a good time. So today I bring Mark on as a guest. Mark recently did a project where he demolished a parking structure. And there's some elements of demolition that I wanted to bring Mark on to talk about because not a lot of people get to experience demolition as part of their career paths or just experience the level of detail that goes into demolishing something. And so I wanted to bring Mark on, talk about his project, issues that he had, codes that need to be followed, and all the things that you can check out or need to check out as an engineer as you develop a demolition plan. So anyway, with that, Mark is a great guest. I bring him back frequently as a guest on the show, and it's always a good time to talk to him. So we're going to talk about demos today. I think you'll really enjoy it, and it's going to be coming right up after this. All right, what is going on, everybody? Mark, welcome back to the podcast. How's life over there?
Great. It's good to be back with you, bro.
Yes, indeed.
Always fun.
Mark gets a lot of experience out in the field, so it's always fun to bring him back on and talk about some projects he's been doing. So today we want to talk about demolition. So it's going to be a fun topic as we talk about demolition. Mark recently had a project where he did that. So Mark, why don't you just take us through kind of high level what the scope of this project was that you did, and as we talk about demolition, these are just some good pointers for other engineers that may consider this is, when it comes across their plate to do demolition work. But high level, what's the project you worked on and what happened?
Yeah, so hopefully you can get a little feel for how demolition works. Now, this isn't a huge demolition project. I think a lot of times when we think of demolition, we think of that footage that we've seen on the news where they maybe bring down a big tower, right? And it implodes and it kind of collapses in on itself, and to a lot of fanfare and spectacle, right? And the news is there and it makes a big crashing sound and
probably
dust.
Expecting something bad to happen.
Yeah. And while those are kind of cool demo projects, I guess more visual, more coverage, more attention is paid to those types. Most of them are pretty simple,
Right.
And that's what this project was for me. It was fairly straightforward. We were hired by an office complex property owner to replace an aging parking structure that was built in 1981-ish kind of era. And what they used was a type of construction called precast construction, which is pretty common these days. And what they used for the primary structural component for the suspended slabs is what they call a double T, long span double T, and it's basically a kind of a double beam structure that they precast off-site, and then they bring in once the footings and the foundation walls have been constructed. They come in with these precast double T's and kind of lay them out with a crane and put them all into place. And after you've laid them all out, then voila, you got a nice parking deck to park cars on. And so this deck had been in service for about 40 years, which is, not bad.
It's a good life.
Yeah, it's a really good life for parking structure. But there had been some corrosion. This project is in Salt Lake City, and we get the de-icing salts on the roads, right? And what does de-icing salts do to concrete and reinforcement?
Just beats the crap out of it. Starts corroding. You got issues.
It beats the crap out of it. So it was kind of falling into disrepair. The property owner was getting new tenants, and they were concerned about And then on top of that, do you remember our 5.6 magnitude earthquake that rolled through Salt Lake City?
Yeah. So right when COVID was kind of hitting and people were working from home, Salt Lake had a nice earthquake roll through too. A lot of people thought it was kind of the end of the world at the time, which most of the world thought. But yeah, we had a pretty good sized earthquake, and there was a lot of damage too.
There was. And a lot of our buddies in California are probably saying, big deal, 5.6, whatever. For us, it was kind of like, whoa. And along the Wasatch Front, we're capable of some pretty, sizable seismic events.
They keep predicting the big one coming.
Yeah.
So
we just don't get them all that frequently. But anyway, so that seismic event kind of exposed some more of, I'll say, the structural maladies that this parking structure was suffering from. It suffered a little bit of damage. Some of the connections got shaken; they were cracked. So the parking structure needed to come down.
Did the ownership have you guys come and do an assessment on it, or like what was the reason why they even investigated replacing it in the first place? Was it customers? Was their parking tenants that expressed concern, and that
it was
got
parking?
The ball rolling?
A lot of it was originated from the owner himself. I don't know if that came from complaints from tenants, but the owner recognized that there was a problem.
Got it.
Which is kind of the way it should work. Owners of properties like this should be doing their annual maintenance and looking at things. And so he recognized it as an issue. Okay. And so that's when he approached us, and then we looked at it and said, "Yeah, you got a problem here.
Yeah,
we can price a full removal and replacement, and here's our money here's the price for our services." And he accepted that, and we were off to the races. And so,
awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of the background story. Now, so we did this a week ago today, where we did the demolition. Now, there's a lot of preparatory work that has to go into design work, permitting, structural analysis that has to go into effect before you even start demolishing anything, right? So our first concern is to look at the surrounding. We kind of have an idea what the structure's doing, right? We realize there's a problem. We understand, where the structural deficiencies are. So we know the building's got to come down. So now we start looking at the surrounding areas, most specifically the adjacent office building, right? When you're bringing down a building that's connected to another building, you have to start worrying about shared structural components. Those are usually shared vertical components, foundation walls, shear walls, and those kinds of things. Luckily for this project, we had completely separate structural systems that were pretty well separated. So they kind of shared a common foundation wall, but that foundation wall had what we call a corbel that kind of stuck out from the foundation wall to kind of receive these structural precast double T's that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So that they had a spot for those to bear on. Those are actually just bearing on the foundation wall that was shared by the office building. And so we could see that there was that separation there. And then with a few saw cuts, we could make a full separation. And then we could peel those double T's away from the building and not impact the building, the foundation wall.
That sounds like a lot of preparatory work on this when you're getting ready for a demo. You can't just go out and demo stuff. I'm just curious. So is this other building owned by a separate owner that it was connected to, or is it all the same ownership?
Same owner, although there was a structure to the north. This was in downtown Salt Lake City, so it's not like a huge, dense urban environment like you might see, like I don't know, downtown Manhattan, New York, of course. It's a little more spread out than that, but there's still to the north, to the west, to the south. There was a lot of nearby structures that you got to worry about impact. And so what we do is we actually set up little seismometers to monitor the vibration and stuff too. And everything I'm talking about too is part of what we put together as a demolition plan that we have to submit to the municipality. And we're trying to adhere to IBC Chapter 33, primarily in our analysis. Sometimes when you're close to pedestrian areas, you have to provide pedestrian walkways and little structures that can protect any passersby, pedestrians. We were actually on the backside of a property, so pedestrians weren't an issue. It was just monitoring adjacent structures, which there's some homes, some apartment buildings in the surrounding area, and they're actually older structures. Most of that stuff I would guess is circa 1930 as far as they were built. Old. Yeah. And so our overall demo plan has to consider all of those adjacent structures and how we're going to protect them and how we're going to monitor our vibrations and those kind of things. So we actually set up little kind of seismometers to make sure that we're not exceeding allowable tolerances for those adjacent structures as we do our demo. So that's part of our overall demo plan.
So you mentioned IBC as a code that you used as kind of a guideline. Is there any other codes that you adhere to or look at when you're demoing?
Yeah. So most of the other codes that I get into are structural codes that help me with kind of the forensics, right? Because as part of our demolition, I have to put demolition equipment. In this case, they're little mini excavators with jackhammers, hydraulic jackhammers that are attached to the end of the arms. And that's the equipment that I have to put on there. And so to assess whether that equipment can be supported on an old structure, I've got to have some kind of idea what that old structure is capable of holding up, right? What kind of loads it's capable of withstanding. So I usually follow, there's some AASHTO guidelines for bridge work that I follow, but in the National Precast Association, you can do some investigation on the way they used to prescribe the design on old precast, because I didn't have any contract drawings for this project. It was built back in 1981, and nobody has those on hand. They're just
really they had some physical drawings that they weren't digitized and they're gone.
Right.
I think every company goes through a little bit of that. So
yeah, when you get projects that are this old, there's just, where are the drawings? Nobody's held on to them. And a lot of times it's just because the company that built this structure probably had them, and then maybe they went out of business, and who knows where they went.
Or sometimes or whatever.
Yeah. Sometimes the municipality might have them on file, but that's not always the case. So what I have to do is kind of get an idea what these structural tees are worth as far as loading goes, and then assess whether I can get a piece of equipment on top of it. And that goes into our overall demolition plan, right?
Interesting.
So we're trying to build this demolition plan, and we're making all these assessments. And so that was a big consideration. In fact, initially we were going to try to put a bigger excavator with a bigger jackhammer on it, hydraulic hammer. But those big ones, they can weigh in excess of 70,000 pounds.
Ooh.
And
Mark, have you done a lot of demo projects in the past? Is demo a regular thing? It doesn't seem like it's done as often.
It's not as common as typical new construction. Yeah, right. For sure. And usually demolition isn't on a more, I'll say, a more complicated structure, like we've got here, where we have actual suspended slabs and suspended some kind of suspended structure. And I would say bridges fall into that category as well. But they're usually just like, single family homes and stuff that, you got a new highway that's got to go through an area, and some homes have been, bought by the local DOT as part of their right-of-way process, and then they're going to knock them down. Well, there's not much risk in those taking those structures down because they're single family homes. I mean, a track hoe with a bucket can take a few swipes at that structure and knock it down. And as long as everybody's out of the way, it's not a big deal.
So for those that are going to be watching this, because we will post this on our YouTube channel, we will have a video. Mark showed a video of those of crew members demolishing this structure. And for those listening to it, Mark's done a great job in trying to describe what we're going to show you. But if you get a chance to jump on our YouTube channel, definitely go check it out. We'll show some video of the actual demo that Mark took. And I'm just curious, Mark, as you were out there inspecting this stuff, were there any issues that came up as you were inspecting things? What kind of things were you looking for as part of the demo plan?
So once I had my demolition plan put together, right? So I had gone back and I assessed, okay, this is what I think these structural tees, how much load that they can carry. I had determined that a typical excavator was too heavy for these things. So I came up with, or our team came up with, using mini excavators, which are only 21,000 pounds each. And I estimated that the shear capacity on these double T's, we had plenty of shear capacity to support a mini X, right? So that's what we decided to go with, is just a couple of mini excavators, and you'll see that on the video. And part of my demolition plan was to have those kind of at the edges, or at the edges of the beams, the two ends of the beams, where the shear capacity was the greatest. That's where I kind of wanted these mini X's to be confined as far as how far away they were drifting or traveling from the edges, just to minimize the amount of moment that I was inducing into these beams.
That's amazing, because I think when you're watching the video, people might be thinking, well, it's this, this isn't a huge demo because you've got this small excavators out there, but really you put thought and engineering into making that a decision.
Yeah, because I've got crew members that are on top of this thing that they are tearing down. Right. And so it's almost like they're undermining the supporting structure that's actually kind of that's holding them up, and it's dangerous. If this stuff comes down, the whole, not only are we losing equipment, which doesn't matter in the face of losing somebody's life, that's what we're really worried about. And so it's very easy. And you'll see in the video, there's as these guys are chipping these structural members apart, they're always bearing on a sound structural T that they're not demoing, right? So they're standing on a structurally sound double T, and then they're reaching out and breaking apart the one that's like right next to it. So you're worried about those tracks and the load from that mini X just being on a sound structural double T, or they can basically undermine their supports, right? And off they go over the edge.
Were these all items that you hit in tailboard meetings and discussions with your crews, obviously, before they get out and start tearing this stuff apart? Is there other details that you had to go over to make sure they're safe?
Yeah. Well, so I get my my demolition crew. We have a pre-construction meeting or a pre-demolition meeting, and we just discuss what the game plan is here. And so I've got experienced superintendents that have this job was kind of relatively easy for them. My guys are used to taking down bridges that are over major highways. I-15 is a major corridor in Utah, Salt Lake City area. And these guys are used to taking down bridges, and they have to do it within one night, where they start maybe at, 9:00 at night, and they have to have the bridge taken down by 6:00 the next morning, or we get severe penalties imposed on us, from UDOT if we don't get it down in time, and so morning traffic can pass by. And so these guys that I've got are used to working under the gun like that. And so this one was actually kind of a nice reprieve from that, because we had all the time in the world we needed to get this down, right? There wasn't any I-15 traffic that's trying to pass underneath this thing. It was just, let's just get it down safely, make sure nobody gets hurt, make sure the neighbors aren't too mad at us for making all the noise,
That's great.
And we'll be done. But before we started, we all sat down and we created a general plan. And then my job was to make sure that the engineering, was going to work, make sure that the loads that were going to be supported were going to work, and then dictate what those parameters were as far as the equipment movement, what those parameters were, given the capacity of those double T's. And then, and then we created a set of drawings, and we had a little bit of a write-up that we had to explain to the municipality of how we were going to do this thing. And we got it submitted, and
boom,
they approved it. And then we were ready to go.
So just a follow-up question then is, as you're preparing this, what stage do you get public awareness involved? What did you have to do to get the public at least informed on what you're doing?
Yeah, so there's actual firms, companies that specialize in public information and distributing public information. And we utilize those guys a lot and on our bigger projects. On this one, it was small enough that we kind of felt like, we can just go door to door to all the neighbors and just kind of explain to what's going on. And we had help from the owner of this project too, because he knows, at least he knows better than we do, the neighbors, and so those that may be sensitive to what's going on. And we just kind of blanketed the area we had a little informational, flyer, a letter that just we were given to people that was explaining what was going on, when we were going to start, how long they could expect the process to take, and just those kind of things. And
it's going to be noisy.
It's going to be noisy. You're going to be disruptive on this Saturday morning, and then throughout the week, we're going to be rubbleizing all of the beams that we've dropped. So there's going to be some more noise, and that goes a long way, Isaac. Yeah. When people know what's going on, they tend to be a lot more forgiving about, about tolerating the impact, the inconvenience,
or even issues that come up. They know why, what's going on. So I know I appreciate being informed when stuff's going around just around my house. So I imagine it's the same as you scale that up. So
So anyway, so when I went there to do my inspection, I was just basically, because my guys, they get their heads down working sometimes, and sometimes it's easy to forget, oh man, I'm getting this excavator maybe a little bit too far in the middle. Mark didn't want me to quite that far towards the edge. I got to come back, and so my inspection was just to kind of make sure that things globally were being followed as far as our plan was. And the guys did great, but I'm telling you, man, it was an exciting thing to witness, because I was up on that deck a few times and it was bouncing like a trampoline.
Ooh.
I mean, those hydraulic hammers get going, and they push down into the double T that's being demolished. Well, that obviously there's a reaction there, right? And it pushes back on the machine, and then that loads the double T that they're sitting on, and that constant variation in load and then release. I mean, it gets that deck I felt like I was on. Yeah, it was kind of exciting, because you think of parking in like a parking structure or something. It's usually not bouncing, and if it is, you're worried about it. But this was it was exciting to be up there and
I'd
feel
say
that
so.
thing move. And then, and then the other thing I was looking at was the adjacent structure. I was making sure that the separation between the double T's and the office building, that
Clean and good.
it was nice and clean. And there was a brick veneer that was on that building that we were trying to protect, making sure that there wasn't any damage going on with that. And just kind of making sure that our plan was being followed so that
that's good.
We didn't have any incidences. And so it went well. The guys did a good job, but it was exciting to see it come down.
Well, I imagine it's pretty tragic if you do find stuff that is an issue. So it's I'm happy that you were able to keep things going and everything worked out just as planned. So that's perfect.
Yeah, worked out great. And like I say, it wasn't a big demolition plan, but it was one that's not, I wouldn't say it's typical, right? I'd say more of a single family home, kind of a dwelling demo is mostly what we typically see, but it had enough, I'll say, complication to it that made it interesting. And then to see what's cool, and this is cool about engineering in general, and why being an engineer is kind of a cool thing, is you can see the practical side of your design, right? Your thought process, your planning, your calculations. You can see them being executed, and you can kind of witness whether they work or not. And so that's satisfying to me, and so that was cool about this little project.
Yeah, that's always satisfying when your calculations and things work out, and that's a great thing to happen.
Yeah, it's a little nervous because your calcs, could be protecting the lives of your guys, right? You're basically predicting that their equipment that they're going to put on that deck it's not going to overload the deck.
Yeah, there's a reason why you have a professional license.
Yeah.
And you follow the rules. So.
And the guys, my guys trust me, and it's good that they do.
Great.
But it does come with that, level of responsibility that you gotta make sure you got everything covered. Make sure you know what you're doing. Sure.
Well, Mark, this has been a fun episode. Is there anything about this project or demolition in general that you want to touch upon?
Well, I would just say that it's not anything to be afraid of as an engineer. It's just something that you just need a little experience with, making sure. I've had guys that I didn't jump into my first demolition plan, cold turkey. I had people that helped me understand all of the variables and all of the angles that you needed to look at and consider. And so that I got, comfortable with it. But I would just say that it's nothing to be scared of. It's, if you boil it all down, it's just structural engineering. It's just making sure load paths are taken care of. And it's almost like reverse engineering, instead of constructing something, you're taking it down, but the same structural principles, still apply.
That's great.
So it's nothing to be afraid of. In fact, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think it would be a good thing to put on your, not the resume, but just your whole job experiences. Just, you probably need to experience that.
It's one of the more exciting things that you get to experience in your career is demolition. It's kind of cool.
That's great. Well, Mark, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for explaining the project and kind of going over some demolition stuff. I think if you're headed towards a structural engineering path, definitely you're probably going to run into this. So hopefully there's some tips here that you can learn from or just incorporate in your own engineering career. So, Mark, thanks for jumping on again.
You bet.
All right. See ya.
Okay. See ya.